Okay, in this session today, we're going to talk a little bit about the guy-girl relationship again, and maybe some things that you might label as what not to do, and according to God's standard of what not to do. You know, the Bible clearly shows the problems that come into people's lives in relationships when they allow their selfish, sinful, lustful desires to take control and guide their thoughts and actions. And you know, that really happens very naturally. Actually, you know, you think of on a computer, there's default settings, or on your phone, you know, there's default settings that are just automatically there, and you can change them and make them what you want them to be usually. Well, I kind of like to think of our own heart, our own actions have kind of a default setting, and that default setting never naturally goes toward the path of God. Okay, it doesn't naturally. The Bible talks about the natural man in the New Testament and how it's related, connected with that sinful nature that we all have inside of us, that natural bent toward sinful behavior and ways that are contrary to God and His righteousness and His perfect ways. And so the Bible really makes it clear. You can read throughout the Bible. I do challenge you, read the whole Bible if you haven't. Read through it from cover to cover. You'll see all kinds of problems that God so graciously shows us and warns us about. The dangers that come through sinful, selfish, lustful desires taking control and guiding thoughts and actions in life. And this often leads to physical interaction that leads to more and more physical interaction. And before you know it, even before marriage, you know, many times there's a baby on the way. The physical aspect of a relationship is clearly reserved for after marriage. And so I know some of these things, maybe this is the first time that you've ever even heard something like this. And so you might say, wow, that just sounds so crazy. I could never believe that. I could never live that way. But like I've said before, we first of all have to turn to God for His free gift of salvation, and He makes us really a new creature, puts new desires in our heart, helps us to fulfill the purpose and plan for which He created us for. Now I'd like you to think about a Bible verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1. And again, there's many others we could look at, but one foundational verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1, states that it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Now you might think, wow, what does that mean? And I personally have heard people describe that verse in numerous different ways. Some people say, oh, that just means, you know, in no touching in intimate ways. That's what it means. But the Bible doesn't specifically say, it doesn't specify that. And I know that even you put a guy and a man and a woman, you know, two attractive individuals, a man and a woman together, and why is it that they like to even just hold hands together? It's because there's something kind of electrifying in that. And so it's good for a man not to touch a woman, even if it is just holding hands. Okay, that always can lead to further and further touching, and eventually you get far enough where there's a baby on the way. There, you know, different things like that. And I just keep mentioning that because I know that's probably the number one reason why we have millions of abortions in our world today. And it's just an awful thing to see. And maybe you've had an abortion, maybe you've been involved in that. And I'm not trying to at all make you feel like dirt or anything. There's great hope. God can help you. He can lead you. But numerous other passages show that physical interaction within marriage is good and proper. For example, Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. Okay, speaking of a married man and a woman, you know, sleeping together, that's undefiled. There's no defilement in that. But whoremongers and adulterers, God will judge. So it's very clear that we should not even touch someone of the opposite gender. Okay, of course, you know, there's appropriate interaction for siblings and parents and children. You know, there's appropriate interaction with that. But I know the world would say this is totally crazy and absurd, but we must go with what God thinks.